G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. And since last week's episode we have actually sold the XB Ute that we mentioned. Thanks again to Mark and Troy, good on you guys, nice to see you, nice to meet you both. And in this week's episode we're going to be jumping back onto the Chevy Chassis, so stick around, hope you enjoy. Alright, so as you can see, I've already been through and got this chassis in epoxy primer. So I've given it 2 or 3 good coats of epoxy primer. And yeah, so we're ready now to put the cross member in for the foreling. So this is our Ridetech system. It's basically a ladder bar. I think it's called ladder bar, is it? Ladder bar foreling system. So this is the cross member that the forelink attaches to. Basically goes in there, but it's a very tight fit. It's probably, 3mm, 4mm or something like that over. So I've just got this quarter power in here, so we'll just go ahead and jack her apart. Alright, that should do it. And then this thing just drops in here right behind the actual body mounts. Sits down here like that. I don't know how clear this is coming up because it's all painted black, but yeah, so that's it. And the way that they say to do it in the instructions from Ridetech is to drill holes through here, and they have a self-tapping bolt. I'll just grab some. Yeah, so they've got these self-tapping bolts, which is all well and good, but I don't know if I feel that great about the whole back end being held in by some self-tapping bolts. Now, apparently it's fine, but my inclination, if you like, is to weld the whole thing in. So I'm just sort of thinking maybe instead of putting these self-tappers in, just use the holes as a plug weld system. So, fully weld in each hole, and then weld around the outside of the bracket. That way it's not going anywhere. So I guess that's the most permanent way of putting it in. Now, I think they designed these things so that they could be installed basically from underneath a car. So, like the car's fully complete, a guy decides to put a Ridetech system in, puts it up on a hoist, and you can basically install it from underneath the car just by drilling some holes. And that's probably a really good system for that case scenario. But if I've got the chassis all stripped down like this and I've already fully welded in a strengthening system, why not just weld in the cross member, I reckon. Yeah, so I think that's what we'll do. I'll go ahead, I'll get my little belt sander. I've already had this in, I've already sort of marked around it with a pencil. So I'll go ahead, I'll grind around the outside of it with a little belt sander just to expose the metal. I'll clean up the edges of it, and then we'll go ahead and we'll weld her in. Then the other thing that we'll have to do is we've got these mounts for the coilover, which goes somewhere here, but I'm going to have to measure it. The instructions are a little bit vague. It just says measure 20¼ inches from the rear of the big hole in the bottom of the chassis. So, which big hole? I suppose I'm thinking it's only this one. This is the only big hole in the bottom of the chassis. But when I do that, it puts the mount right back here, and it doesn't look right because you've got that's been bent into a shape for a reason. That sits down there nicely, but when you put it there, it doesn't look right. So I don't know. Kind of like not sure. Anyway, I think what I'll do, I'll worry about the cross member first, then we can go ahead and put our ladder bars in, and we can once you've got the ladder bars in, we can figure out where the diff is going to go, the mounting brackets to go on the diff, etc, etc. So as far as the diff goes, I've already ordered a diff housing from Craft Diffs in Sydney. They said that they should have it here in a few days, so they're just going to basically tack the housing together enough for me to be able to mock it up and get my 4-link bracket tacked to it, and then what I'll do is I'll send it back to them. They'll fully weld it and check for straightening. They've got, obviously they're professionals at setting up diffs, so I thought I'd just, even though I could weld it, I thought I'd just do it that way just to be sure. So in the meantime, yeah, let's just get this thing welded in and we'll go from there. Now that I've cleaned the paint off in the areas that I want to weld, just going to double check things. Now in the Ridetech installation instructions, it says to put the cross member hard up against the body mount. So I did that, and then I thought I'll just double check things. And I took some measurements from a common point at the front of the chassis and found that there was a 5mm discrepancy on either side. So I think what I'll do is measure again from a common point. So I'll take from the front of that subframe and I'll measure to my actual cross member. And if I do it in metric, that side's 2500 exactly to the edge of that front edge of that bracket. Do the same on this side. And I've got 2500. Now that's cool, but when I look from side to side, I do notice that there's a slightly bigger gap from the front edge of the cross members bracket to the body mount than there is on this side, but I'm not going to let that bother me, because the main thing is that the measurements from the front of the frame to the cross member are the same. So measure twice, weld once. 20, actually that's not 25, hang on a sec. See, that's why you measure twice. Just gonna let some weight off that so it's not jumping around. And then alright, so I've got 2500 there. Make sure it's, that's the other thing, you've got to make sure it's seated down. That's telling me 2502. Get this seated down. $2,500, more or less 2500 exactly, 25 and a half a mil. Again, 25. Alright. That's 25. 25? Okay, now I've got the cross member welded in. Obviously going to have to do the final weld underneath this plate, so that means tipping her over. And I've also got this this piece here to weld in, part of the strengthening kit. Goes in there like that, so again we'll weld that in once we get her upside down. Oh, actually not upside down. Alright guys, so I got the welding finished on the chassis, cross member is all welded in, and we've given her a nice recoat of epoxy. And the actual diff housing arrived today from Craft Diffs in Holroyd, New South Wales. I've got all my components for the Ridetech Parallel 4-link all set up on the table here. And so we're pretty much all ready to start mocking it up. So that's what we'll do now. We'll get into it and we'll start getting this thing mocked up. Okay, so where we're at, we've got this this diff housing mounted up on some axle stands, and according to the instructions they say here that pinion angle must be set at ride height. So, and ride height you should allow about 4.5 inches between the axle and the frame. So that's what I've done. Set up on the axle stands, 4.5 inches between the bottom of the frame, top of the housing. And just want to say again, thanks to Richard Craft for getting this diff mocked up for me so quickly. Appreciate that, Richard. Okay, so now that that's in situ as far as height goes, I've also taken my measurements. Really great drawings, I know. Anyway, so the total width of the housing at the moment is 52.5 inches. So the outside measurement of these brackets on the cross member is 31.5 inches. So if you minus 31 from 52.5, you end up with 20.1 divided by 2 is 10.5 inches. So I've measured in 10.5 inches from the outside face of the housing in, put myself a mark there and a mark there. So now I know where the brackets go, and these are what the brackets look like. So they slot up like that. And I'm just basically going to, once I've got these all figured out, I'm just going to tack these in position, take it back to Craft Diffs, and then they can weld her all up. So that's what we're doing today, is just mock up. So next step, before we can worry about pinion angle, is to get our arms on, what do you call them, trailing arms? I'm not sure. Parallel 4-link arms? I really don't know, but here they are. So we've got 4 of them. And then we've got, I think, is that called a panhard rod? Goes across on an angle. So we'll go ahead and get all our hardware sorted out. So I sort of noticed that these are really quite beautifully made joints. Yeah, quite cool. Now I need to be able to sit that in position against the housing, but still be able to turn the housing. So, yeah, what am I going to do? because that's got to come up and sit there like that and stay there. So I guess I'll get some bits of timber. Let's see how we go with some bits of timber. Alright, so I've got this side pretty much where I want him, and he's fairly snug up against the bottom of the housing, so I think we can go ahead and do the same on the other side, and then we should be ready at that stage to figure out our pinion angle. Alright, so I've got the brackets for the trailing arms pretty much situated where I need them under the housing on both sides. And so now we're at that point where we want to just get our pinion angle set up. Since we've got it sitting at ride height, we'll get our pinion angle set up. So at the moment I've got this this angle indicator set to 0 for a vertical surface, and it's currently showing me 12.9 degrees, so that's way too much. So we'll go ahead and see if we can just rotate this housing. Alright, so we're at 5.5. Bump her a little bit more. 3.1. 2.7. 3. Alright, so I think that's where we need to be. We're right at 3 degrees. So we'll go ahead and get him tacked up, I guess. Can't really think of anything else I need to do. Maybe I'll just double check all the measurements and then we'll go ahead and throw some tacks on the housing. Brackets all tacked up, just basically 4 tacks, 1 in each corner, and our gauge is still reading 3 degrees. Yeehaw, happy days. And I also threw the panhard rod in, you know, just to kind of make sure everything's in the right place. So I think she's looking pretty good. So what I could do now is remove all the blocks of timber. We'll go ahead and put the little brackets on for the coilovers. Alright, we've got the shock mounts on the bottom of the diff housing there. So now I'm going to go ahead and assemble these shocks. So these are from Ridetech, but I noticed they've got a little Fox logo there, so I guess they're Fox shocks. And yeah, so first thing is we've got to go ahead and put the adjuster nut on the bottom. They don't actually say it in the instructions, but I've heard elsewhere, I can't remember where, that it's always good to put a bit of anti-seize on these, just so that you don't get galling later on when it's under load if you want to adjust it. The only problem with putting the anti-seize on, it's messy, it gets everywhere. So actually I might put gloves on. Right, okay. So I might just use a little bit of a rag, smear this around inside a little bit. You don't need much really, just a little bit, just to stop it galling. What's galling? Well, it's when the threads snag up under pressure. So I'm just going to take that up over the logo so it's completely on the thread. We'll call that good for now. And then it says to put one of these little washers on. What do they call it? They call it a Delrin washer. Delrin washer, okay. I guess I could take that little thing out. Just a little chock, little plastic chock. It actually has a little Allen key to go in there, so I might just get him started. What size is he? Doesn't really matter. I'll just get him in there finger tight. Good enough. And then install there, and then the coil spring over the top of the shock. Like so. Then you've got to actually remove the little adjuster knob, and it says here, yeah, before the upper spring mount can be installed, screw the adjuster knob on the upper eye mount to its firmest setting clockwise, which I've done, and then remove the knob. So here we go, take that off. They don't actually include the tool, but it's kind of like an Allen key. I don't know what it's called, but it's one of these things. And I just so happen to have the exact size in the drawer. I don't know why, I don't have any other ones. So lucky me. Put that there. What's next? Once the knob is removed, slide the Delrin washer over the eyelet. Next, slide the upper spring mount, which would be that thing, onto there, like that. Slide the upper spring mount over the eyelet. Install the upper spring mount retainer clip, which would be this. Okay, maybe I need to back that off a little bit. So probably should get something. What do I need? What do I need? Got it. So it wasn't that hard. Alright, so it's on. I'm just going to screw that back on so I know I've got a full thread. So I'll get it right to there, which is cool. So I've got that one. Let's just do this one. A little bit of this. I'm just using a bit of Permatex anti-seize lubricant. So this time I'm just going to get it started, and I'll leave it there. Take that guy out and put this guy in. And then a Delrin washer, a spring, check the settings, turn to max, take the knob off, another Delrin washer, cap is there. Oh, that one's way less. Why are you like that? I guess I'm just not up very much. Anyway, moving right along, get this in as such. And that's not too hard. See how much of a mess that anti-seize leaves. Just goes everywhere. Like I said, you don't need much, just a little dab, and she's everywhere. Anyway, probably clean it off later on with a bit of Prepsol or something. Good enough for now. So we've got our two springs. I guess I'll put these back on. Cool, that one. There is a couple little grease nipples, which I guess are meant to go on the bottom, but I noticed that there's no thread for them to screw into, so I guess they're expecting you to make your own thread. We'll go with this one, because those ones actually slotted inside that, but these ones go on there, so you're going to have to assume that that's right. And then a washer, and then a nut. Except you probably wouldn't put your adjuster knob next to the chassis rail. That wouldn't make any sense. It goes on like that. Okay. Stay, don't go flipping out on me. And then you've got that, a couple of them, and would it be that? No, it's too long. So I might be missing some hardware. Okay, we might have to go looking. Alright, I can't seem to find the right bolts for these shocks, so I'm just going to make do. Just make do with what I've got here, just for the purpose of mocking up. So right, so this is what I didn't get when I first read the instructions. It said to measure from the edge of a big hole, which is in the bottom of the chassis here, 20 1/4 inches, and that'll give you the edge of your bracket. Well, I'm in fairly much a vertical position for the coilover, and I've still got at least 1.5 inches before I meet the mark, which is back here. So if I met the mark, it'll put the coilover on an angle like that. Now, is that right? I don't know. The other issue being that even if I got it back to that mark, so it actually doesn't look too bad there. You see those mating surfaces, one of them's a little bit off, but let me just put a clamp on that. Now the actual mark, which if you go by the instructions, it's right back here. So it's going to put the shock on an angle like that, which means it's going to be totally twisting on the stud and possibly getting worse as the system comes up. So that's a bit of a mystery to me. If I go to the instructions, alright, here it is. So that's not very clear, I know, but it says the location of the upper shock wave, it's talking about shock wave, that's like gas, but anyway, shock wave mount is determined by measuring 20 1/4 inches from the edge of the bracket to the rear edge of the large hole in the bottom of the frame. And there it shows, taking the measurement, I guess, from where the end of the bracket is to the large hole in the bottom of the frame. And if you look under here, there's a large hole in the bottom of the frame. But if I measure 20 1/4 inches from the rear of that hole, it puts me right back. You can see that mark there. Given where it is, the position it's in, I reckon that looks about right. I don't think it should be like going up on a weird angle. And as I said before, if you look at the mounting surface on the bottom there, it's fairly close. Now, I'll show you on the other side what I mean by close. If I put this one, where is he? I know you're here somewhere. There he is. Okay, so if I put the back edge of the bracket on my mark, Oh, hang on a sec. Yeah. So the back edge of the bracket's on the mark there. And it's not the best. It doesn't really mount up right. And plus, it puts this on a weird angle. So it's going down like that, instead of sort of being more sort of straight up and down. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and whack this other one on. Well, there you go, guys. The Ridetech Parallel 4-link is installed. Well, maybe mocked up is a better description. So next I'm going to take the diff housing out, take it back to Craft Diffs. I'm going to let them finish welding it up and install the axles in the center, and then we'll bring it back here. We'll get some epoxy on it, and well, once I've sorted out these coilover mounts, that's the only thing I'm left with at the moment. I'm not gonna weld them in at this stage because I really want to figure it out. As I said, by moving the top of that back 2 inches would just be totally wrong. So I've got to figure out why they put in their description 20¼ inches from the edge of that hole, because it just doesn't make sense. So it's either figure it out through them, or maybe some of you guys who've done some of these 4-links can throw your comments in. What do you reckon? Should that coilover be pretty much in a vertical position? I just don't think it's right for it to be slanted back on an angle. Just doesn't seem to make sense, because it'll go on even more of an angle if the the car if the diff comes up higher. Yeah, so leave your comments, let me know what you think. In the meantime, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I have to say that it's the first time I've installed a 4-link, and I think this was a good way to go because it was a fairly easy installation. It was purpose built for this car, and some pretty, I would say on the whole, some pretty good components. When you look at those R joints, they call them R joints, yeah, they're pretty nice. What I'm talking about is on the end of these trailing arms. And yeah, the coilovers, they're nice. The whole design of it. The only thing that I guess that I would say about the whole thing is it's just a little disappointing that these mounting brackets don't quite match the bottom of the frame, so I may actually have to cut that tab and move it. And as I say, the issue with installation as far as their measurements goes doesn't seem to make sense, so we might have to improvise on that. The only other negative was missing some hardware, by the looks of it, missing the actual bolts that go up here. So, and well, to be honest, I was actually missing that lower bracket as well. So far, because I've got Ridetech front and rear on this car, and as far as the rear goes, yeah, I unboxed the kit to look at it and then boxed it all back up again, but I just, probably in the excitement of it, I didn't sort of go through and check off items. And now that it's come to installation time, we didn't have that bracket, and we didn't have the bolts for the top here. And I was sort of thinking maybe I lost the bracket, but I went back through the video. We did a video where we went to visit Sam at West End Performance, and we were looking around his cars, and then we came back and we had all the kit laid out on tables, and I looked at that video, and sure enough, it only had that right hand bracket, didn't have the left hand. So lucky for me, I sort of searched around, and I found that there was a company in Victoria called Air Ride, and they they resell a lot of the Air Ride systems for Ridetech, and that bracket is the same as on their universal Air Ride system or Air Ride 4-link. So managed to get that off them at fairly low cost. It would seem to me, I got it, it took 2 days and I had it here in my hands. That seemed to be a much better option than trying to sort of, figure it out through America, which is where I bought this whole system through Summit Racing, and it wasn't cheap. I will admit. I'll put the price up here so you can see it here, but on a whole, if you compared it to say buying something like a kit that had to be, you know, welded up, or something that you had to get somebody else to install, I think for me it was worth paying the money and just getting something like that that's, you know, made specifically for the car. So all in all, I'm fairly pleased with it, I think. And I think it's going to look great once the car's all finished. Definitely nice system. So when we go to the next episode, probably what you're going to see is we're going to go ahead and install the front. So we've got a complete Ridetech system for the front. We're going to go ahead and install that. In between now and then, I'm going to get this. I'm actually going to put another coat of this is only epoxy primer, so I'm probably going to go ahead and scuff this up and put an actual 2-pack on, and by then hopefully we'll have this diff back. We may or may not. Hopefully we have it back, so you can see the whole thing sort of mocked up, front and rear suspension. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.